Everybody, welcome to the week 6 recording. Hopefully this is a short recorded lecture. So basically I'm going to give you some food for thought as you complete your assignment this week. The readings, you read 3 chapters in the Billings and Halstead book. And basically I'm going to kind of hit briefly on some points made in those chapters, and then give you some direction for, like I said, your homework this week. Course objectives, describe approaches to course design and implementation, and then effective cognitive and psychomotor learning domains. So where we are in our course thus far, we're kind of dreaming about our course, maybe thinking about what we want to teach and why we want to teach it. And we've written some objectives or some big kind of picture things. I want to talk more practically this week about what designing a course would look like outside of kind of achieving those dreams, although that is very important. I want to just talk about some logistical things and have you think about those things as you move forward. So where are you in this course? Where are you in this understanding by design process? Remember, students learn purposely, and so it's part of our job to facilitate those learning experiences to meet those ultimate objectives that we want to achieve in our course. Where are you? Have you reconsidered? And that's okay. So maybe over the course of the last few weeks, you thought maybe that's not what I want, but now I'm interested in this. It's okay. We can revisit those stages on our Understanding by Design template each week. We're going to revisit that again in the next week or so as far as an assignment. So if you need to revise something, change something, it's okay. This is your course. But kind of where are you in thinking in that process? Are you dreaming big, kind of those big changes you want to make, or those questions you're asking about your potential students? Now, the Billings and Halstead book talk about the different types of curriculum models, undergrad and grad, and I'll let you read on those or kind of skim through those chapters. But really at this point, you want to think about what curricula does your course represent, curriculum, and where does it fit? So we can't have this standalone, just out there course that you're designing. This either has to fit into an undergraduate or graduate course as we talk about higher education. And what is the piece that you're missing in that curriculum that you're using your course to fill? So I have this picture in a couple slides, but if you think about an entire puzzle, this is a piece of the puzzle or a couple of pieces of the puzzle. So at this point in moving forward, you really want to consider, is this course in the undergraduate level or the graduate level? And your textbook kind of talks about curriculum in both of those different areas. So sophomore, junior, senior. So if you say, well, this is an undergraduate course, where in the undergraduate course? And let's do a BSN program. So we have traditional levels, sophomore, junior, and senior. What skills or their knowledge will they have to come into your course with? So you can't just start talking about rhythms of the heart. They have to understand there's an anatomy course and a physiology course, and what do they need to know in order to be successful in your course? What is this prior knowledge you're building on? And how will your course fit in the next piece of the puzzle? How will the skills and knowledge learned in your course prepare them for the next step? So kind of, again, where does your course fit in the puzzle of the curriculum? And then if you are teaching in an undergraduate course, does this facilitate their knowledge or preparation for NCLEX? If not, that's okay. My course that I teach, my elective, doesn't have anything to do with NCLEX. It does have to do with professional development, but we're not covering the distinct areas of NCLEX in the course. So does it or doesn't it? You want to think about that. So again, kind of giving you some food for thought, things that you might not have thought about along the way as you're dreaming about your course. So if you're designing a graduate course, well, which program? If you're designing for advanced nurse practitioners, which nurse practitioner population are you designing for? You could also consider designing this for a nurse leadership MSN program. We have one of those here on our campus as a certificate program, or an MSN program. We don't have an MSN in nursing education program, but maybe this is where your dream course fits. Are the DNP students who you'd like to teach? Are these the PhD students? So again, your readings help to kind of guide you in that way. And then thinking, especially in the graduate program, what are some of those regulatory things that you have to think about? Remember where your course fits. I love this slide. As you know, I use it almost in every class, but you have to have this alignment between the mission and vision, the program outcomes, and then your course outcomes. We're eventually going to get to our assignment outcomes, but you see that course kind of fits right in the middle. If we remove the course, not the course outcomes, nothing else would make sense. So we're building or aligning that through. One of the things that I'm going to want you to think about is what program outcomes does my course fit? And so I've given you some models on SOUL with our program outcomes. So we're going to kind of move your course into that program outcome mold for our School of Nursing. It's just easier to do it that way. But they have to align, they have to be congruent, they have to kind of fit with the mission. And eventually you're going to use those course outcomes to write some of your assessment outcomes. So he's right in the middle and he has to fit perfectly as that piece. Okay. So again, program outcomes, we're not going to write your program outcomes, but this is the endeavor the school is actually undertaking this year as we've redesigned our mission, we've written our program outcomes, and now we have to rewrite or revise our course outcomes to fit into those program outcomes. So you're actually going to do the work that we in the School of Nursing are going to do starting in the fall. What does alignment mean? Well, it sounds similar. They should reflect each other. They should be congruent. So for example, if our mission, vision, values, it looks at really the population of West Virginia and beyond, but it doesn't have anything to do with religion. So if all of a sudden you design a course, I actually read a course syllabus. It was a pharmacology course syllabus from another school. And at the end, it just said all in the name of Jesus Christ, which is fine because it was a religious school, Christian school, fit with their mission, fit with their program outcomes. But that wouldn't fit with ours. So what do I mean by alignment? It should be a piece of the puzzle distinctly, but also fit or align and shouldn't stand out as not matching. Okay, now course description. These are words that you use to describe your course. And I've given you some examples on the template you're going to do for your homework, but it doesn't have to be great. And it can be usually 2 sentences, 3 sentences. You don't want a lengthy course description. But you want to begin to think about if you had to describe your course, what the students would achieve in just a few words, what would it be? Remember, you cannot use understand. So you cannot say the students will understand concepts related to, remember, no bueno, no understand. It doesn't even come into our vocabulary other than understanding by design. What do we use that course description for? Well, it's the official description of your course. It goes in the catalog. So I've gone back to catalogs in the 1980s looking for course descriptions to see if particular courses students wanted to bring in meet what our program requires. So it's important that you put some thought into how will you describe your course in just a few sentences. But thinking about that course description is part of what I'd like you to do. Now, we have to fit curricula into our essentials. Remember, you're sort of designing a course that would fit into our curriculum here at WVU. So we are required to use the AACIN essentials for all of our course outcomes. We use the essentials, as I talked about, when we rewrote the mission. We've looked at them with our program outcomes, and now we need to align them with our course outcomes. If your course is in a PhD program, you don't have to do that. But I would actually challenge you to make this either an undergraduate course or graduate course, not in the PhD program, just so you get an idea of what working with these 10 domains, 8 concepts, and the level 2 and 1 competencies are. Because if you go into a job situation after you graduate, you're probably going to be working in some way, shape, or form with these essentials. Even schools that are not accredited by CCNE will draw on these essentials. You would also get some practice in working with a curricular framework and designing things through a framework. So I would advise you, even though technically our PhD program doesn't fall into the essentials or use the essentials, but to use these essentials and design this course as part of your assignment. So you just get some practice doing it. I have the essentials document. There's the website, or it's located on Soul. If you want to look at an online version, you can access it either way. Remember, and I'll address this again in the next few weeks, our curriculum is competency-based, not what they know, but what they can do. So when you're writing your course description, it's not what knowledge they're going to come out of the course with, but what are skills, attitudes, also are they going to be able to do? They can recognize something that's doing something. So when you're thinking about your course description and then thinking about your course, you want to really think competency-based. What can they do? You want to make sure that you're aligning these things with these essentials. So really go in and look at those domains. A level 1, if you're writing to a level 1 competency or sub-competencies, that you're undergraduate. If you're level 2, that you're graduate. So depending on which curricula you want to design your course for, you're going to look at those competencies and really read. These are all sort of in the first several pages of the AACN Essentials. What are those concepts? There's 8 concepts: communication, evidence-based practice, social determinants of health, compassion. What concept may align with your course? So you want to spend a little bit of time looking at the Essentials document. Okay, if you're looking undergraduate and you think, well, I think this course might fit somewhere into preparing my student for NCLEX or students for NCLEX, then look at the test plan. And there's the link. I think I also put it on Soul, so you can refer to the NCLEX test plan. And you're looking at those concepts or areas of testing. So say basic care and comfort or pharmacology. So you want to consider, if this is undergrad and you think it's going to feed into NCLEX test plan, you want to think about that. You can't have a course in the main curriculum that doesn't help a student prepare for NCLEX or professional role. So like I said, my course that we teach, our elective that we teach, does not cover NCLEX topics, but it does help them grow as a professional. And then that professional role is an RN. So you want to think about, again, where does your puzzle piece fit? Is it helping students to prepare for NCLEX? If you're in the graduate program and you're looking at advanced practice nurse, you want to look at the APRN and the NOF guidelines. So the NOF guidelines we're using as we develop our curriculum to understand, in addition, not in replace of, in addition to the essentials, we need to look at these role curricula. So what does an APRN need to know? The AONL is what we're using as the professional standards for our leadership program. If you want to do a midwifery, if that's sort of what you're designing for, the midwifery programs have curricula, things that they're kind of dictating, or things standard that we need to meet. So think about, again, are you undergraduate or graduate? Does the course you're designing contribute to student success and a certification exam if you're doing APRNs? The AONL has a certification exam, so they can sit for a leadership exam. Again, where does your curricula fit in? Your book talks about active and passive learning. I always think of this as asking and telling. So if you're telling someone something, like I'm telling you, they're really learning passively. They're not having to really do anything right now. You're just listening, maybe taking things in. Maybe you're writing some notes, which would be great, but I'm more telling you things. When I say, tell me about your dream course, what level competency does this fit in? What AACN domain does this fit? Or what concept? When I'm asking, that's active learning. And we know students, you guys learn better when you're actively learning. So I want you to begin to think about, how are you going to facilitate these active learning things in your course? What do those things look like? You're going to have to tell them some stuff, but what are you going to ask them to do or ask them to answer? Do you have a clinical component in your course where you want to send them into a clinical environment? What kind of partnership will you need to develop with one of those experiential partners? Is it a hospital? Is it a nursing home? Is it a home health agency? Is it a public health agency? So I want you to begin to think about those things and how that fits into your course. What types of experiences do you want them to have? Do you want them to have a lived experience? Do you want them to give medications? These are things you want to think about. And where will they need to go? So again, outside of this box that we're learning in, if you want your students to have an experience, so for example, one of our faculty members in our undergraduate program teaches a course in gerontology, and she has a background in gerontology and psych. And so she talks in this course about geropsych. She took her students down to Weston. We have, it's called the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Museum, hospital. I can't remember what it's called, but it was this very old, no longer running psychiatric facility. She took her students who were enrolled in this elective there, and because they have a museum and they look at kind of the history of nursing and how we used to take care of patients with mental disorders or mental illness back in the 1950s or back in the 1800s. So she had this experiential learning where she took them on a field trip. Maybe that's something you want to do in your course. So you want to think about that. Other things, are you going to do this face-to-face in a classroom? Are you going to do this asynchronously or synchronously, or in a hybrid form? We have to think about these things when we develop our course, because if we do a face-to-face course, we have to get a room and students have to block off time. If they're going to clinical, so maybe it's a asynchronous didactic portion, but the clinical portion is in person, then we have to think about scheduling. So when you develop a course, these are all things you have to think about. We schedule things sometimes years in advance. If you want to use our sim lab that's in our building, we are oftentimes scheduling that 2 years in advance to make sure we get time in the skills lab. So things you want to think about, is there just one online component? Are you doing different things? When do you think you might have that? Is this during the day because these are undergraduate students, or is this in the evening because they're working adults? Again, lots of things to consider as you develop your course. Learning domains, they talk about this in your text, in your reading, KSA, knowledge, skills, and attitude, or cognitive, psychomotor, affective. Probably the lingo because of CUSIN, CUSIN, Quality, Safety, and Nursing Education. Calls them KSAs, knowledge, skills, attitudes. A lot of things we see in the literature are knowledge, skills, attitude, or we can define them as cognitive, psychomotor, affective. Cognitive, what they know; psychomotor, what they can do with their hands or what they can teach somebody. So they may, psychomotor, we tell them how to give an injection, we give them the theory, but we need that psychomotor component so that we watch them and they do it with their hands, and then they can teach a patient how to do that psychomotor piece. Or affective, if they value something, if they show empathy, if they show compassion, sort of those soft skills. So you want to think about, well, what are these things looking like in your course? What is some cognitive things or knowledge? What are some psychomotor things maybe they need to do? And what are some affective? Sometimes you have all three, sometimes you just have one, but sometimes you have two. So these are just things you want to think about. And if I say KSA, and I think this is on your template, this is really what I'm talking about. Billings and Hossa talks about blooms and looking at how to write things in Bloom's taxonomy. We kind of, for the next few weeks, if not the end of the course, are going to kind of look at Bloom's taxonomy on a weekly basis. So you can use your Billings and Hossa book as a reference for this. The other book that you read, Teaching at Its Best, also uses blooms in a different context. So blooms is something, and as a educator, I have it like literally at my fingertips if I need to refer to blooms. So this is something, if you haven't worked in it a lot, you want to kind of have that page marked in your book so you can refer to it. And then formative and summative. We're not going to talk officially about evaluation or assessment to the end of the course, but you want to start to think about what this might look like. So formative evaluation, we're forming their thoughts and ideas. So we're doing things in the course to let the students know how they're doing. So these are very low stakes. Sometimes they're worth points, sometimes they're not worth points, but it's a connection, should be a connection between you and the student where they're submitting something, you're grading it or reviewing it, or you're writing notes on it, you're track changing things, you're putting comments in it, and then you're giving it back to the student. We should have a lot of these things going on in the course weekly. So I'm giving you graded feedback on your assignments. This is all formative. You're forming their knowledge. Summative, the end. What summarizing? Let's see what they know. So is this a final exam? Is this a standardized test? NCLEX is a summative assessment. Your certification exams are summative assessments. Well, you can't just give one NCLEX without having summative assessments throughout your curriculum. So what you're trying to do with your summative assessment could be a paper, could be a reflection, could be a play, could be lots of different things. But how will you, or what do you want to look at to summarize the students have met those objectives or those things you wanted them to get out of your course? So again, we're not going to talk formally about evaluation for a couple more weeks, but you want to start to think about this and have an idea as you're developing your course. What are some things I want to help to kind of form those ideas? And what are some things I want to develop to really kind of measure that they've met those ideas? Okay, I want you to think about materials. Now, books and articles, kind of think about that. If there's a book that you know right now that you want, we use books in our elective course, then that's what you need to think about. Why do you need to think about this? Because we have to put book orders in, and this is how we students get books when they come in, and they know what books they need to buy. Are you going to use articles in your course? So these are kind of the materials, things that we have to think about prior to beginning a course or when we develop a course. What about, do they need a laptop? If you're going to have them doing standardized testing, or you want them to have certain software, do you want them to have all have the same laptop? Doesn't matter what kind of laptop they have. Do they have to have a laptop? These are some things you want to think about. If you're sending them out into the world, they need a uniform. Right, you got to tell them where to buy it and what it looks like. How are they going to get to these experiential learnings? And WVU, in our school, we don't require our students to have a car in our undergraduate program until their senior year. So if you're wanting an undergraduate program or student in the sophomore level to go to Trans-Allegheny for the day, you got to figure out how to get them there. So these are all these kind of little nuggets to think about. Where do they need housing? If you're sending them to an experiential thing for a week, how are you going to house them? Do they need internet access? And what do you do if a student doesn't have internet access, especially if you're running a synchronous course? And then any other like supply things. I used to teach in a fundamentals class where we used to teach how to put Foley's in and do dressing changes and IVs. So these are things that I would have to think about way ahead of time. How do I need to get it? And where do I need to stash it until it's time to teach? So again, kind of things maybe you didn't think about that goes into course development, I want you to begin to think about. Okay, now, the last thing you have in your readings is your course syllabus. There's a lot of hubbub around course syllabus. Basically, it's a tool for communication between you and your student. It is a contract, meaning once the student leaves the day, the class, the day you present the course syllabus, and they don't have any objections to it, they're kind of bound to going by that syllabus. However, I've had many, many conversations with people if it's legally binding. It's not a legal document, it's a syllabus. So like legally, we can't hold, in a legal sense, we don't hold people to this syllabus. It's really a contract between people. Now, have I changed the syllabus? Have I moved things around? Absolutely. That's why you say schedule may change per discretion of the instructor. There's always a disclaimer, especially with a schedule, because you might say, hey, I want to teach week 2 and week 4 and week 4 and week 2 because I think that works better after your syllabus is published. As long as you have your disclaimer, you're good to go. I've changed things before in that were different from my syllabus, but I sent out a poll and I said, hey, I want to move exam 5 from this day to this day, and here's why. Can you let me know what you think about that? And I usually go by majority rules. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it doesn't mean if you do your syllabus in May and it comes down to you need to change something in October, you can change things in your syllabus. It's a communication tool, which means if you're changing things, communicate that to your students. I always give a why. I want to move this test off of this day because you have a test in another class, or I want to do this because I need a little bit more time to cover the material. So again, if you're going against the syllabus, it is officially communicating, you're communicating those needs. Now we have a syllabus builder at WVU. We're going to use that. You can look at that template. Your final product, we're not going to type it in because then it goes to somebody in who knows where land, but you can see the link for the syllabus builder. I think there's also a link in your folder. So if you were actually doing a class for WVU and you were building a course syllabi, these are the things that the Faculty Senate would want to see in your course prior to submitting it to Faculty Senate for approval. We're going to use just a Word template that I've kind of adapted from some of our course syllabi for this process. But if you want to see what that looks like as far as what WVU would require, you can use the syllabus builder site. Okay. So where do we go from here? So I want you to go to the course development template that I posted on Soul. And it walks through the pieces of things that I asked you to consider in this recording. So when you go to the template, you can see in black, it gives you what I want to know, and then it says your response. But sort of a rust red color are examples. So you can kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's thinking about what does your course description sound like? What materials do you need? Is this asynchronous or face-to-face? And so really when you develop a course, there's a lot more to think about than just what am I going to teach? Okay, so it's due by Sunday in the assignment folder. It's not a discussion, so I'm going to look at those. You're not discussing them on the discussion board. However, when you come to class on the 7th, we're going to take a little bit of time, presentation, 10 minutes max, should be around 5 to 8 minutes, for you to talk about what was in your template and talk about the things that you considered when thinking about developing a course. It's not a formal project. You can just pull up your template and present your template if you want. If you want to do it in a PowerPoint, you can. That's up to you. But a formal presentation, APA, is not required. We just want to know, what are you thinking? You presented your elevator pitch. Now we want to know what else you're thinking about your course. And then in addition to my written feedback, your peers can provide you with some peer feedback. And of course, there's a rubric that's on Soul, embedded into Soul, and also in your syllabus. Okay, so if you have questions this week, don't hesitate to call me, email me. We can set up a Zoom. We can set up whatever kind of meeting you want. Don't stress about this project. It's just sort of thinking about some things that if you were actually developing a course, you'd have to think about, and you're just putting them down on paper. Okay. So that's all I have for this weekly recording. I hope you have a great week. And again, reach out if there's something I can help you with. So thank you so much.